I had seen from somebody else about how people had compared myself to Todd Grande's case of that transgender individual. I really don't appreciate that at all. First of all, I watched the video and that individual honestly was having an autism meltdown. I I believe people have taken the essence out of what was actually going on with that individual. Um, that individual probably has complex trauma with being misinterpreted relentlessly. It is not something that's really easy to do when you have to deal with that every single day, day in, day out. I even have misinterpretations with my caregiver here that are much more mild compared to online ones. And before anyone tries to assume that my family, I have not really been treated that badly by my family, it's my perception. Absolutely not. My father called me names like a worthless piece of shit. I have them on my phone, and you'll see that they are even before AI had existed, so you'll know, like the time frame. Um, and it's just not cool. You know, I've been treated extremely poorly by my mother and my father. Extremely. I've shown a lot of proof of that. Let's see. This was before AI existed. Nothing. Work this right now. This lighting is bad. Nothing. Work this right now. Let me just turn off the lighting. Maybe this will help a little bit. Better lighting. Does that help at all? Nothing. You're worthless right now. Like I've been treated pretty badly by my mother and my father. My parents nearly broke my neck, you know, when my father nearly broke my neck when I was 17. And even now, like my parents have been really awful to me in front of my caregiver, on voice calls and stuff. And it's being documented to California Mentor, which is good for myself. People will see that, it's not just my perception, it's not me that's the problem, it's my family. I'm very triggered about that, and it triggers my PTSD immensely. So, you know what? I watched that video with the individual that's autistic, and I don't even really believe it's about the gender problems. Like that video is misleading to make it about him or her or whatever exclusively having that problem. Because yes, like the trigger itself was, the transgender misgendering and stuff. But that was autism emotional dysregulation, and the police officer is at fault for not having the information on autism spectrum disorder. That faculty probably knew that the individual was on the autism spectrum and probably wanted to intervene. So honestly, like the blame on that individual, it's just misplaced. Jared or whatever their name is, it's really misplaced because that individual was having an autism meltdown, and that faculty was probably trying to intervene. Yes, the officer is at fault for how they treated Jared. Yes, they are. I have no comment on the transgender stuff because I don't even want to get into that. I don't know where I stand with that. I see numerous angles from that. Um, but as far as zooming in on the police officer interaction, They escalated the situation entirely. They humiliated an autistic individual who's probably developmentally delayed and not their age. People have very unfair expectations to act like an adult and together. With autism, the brain develops slower in the prefrontal cortex. So that individual, their brain was developed as a teenager's. That's just not fair. It's really not fair how that individual was treated. Regardless of the transgender stuff. I don't even wanna get into that, that whole thing. I have a few friends who are trans, but, like, I'm not really, like, a person who, like, goes into that very much because it's just so heated and I don't really have a right or wrong answer with it, so I just try my best to stay out of it. Um, I don't believe the media is helpful and stuff, but that individual was handled incorrectly by law enforcement, and law enforcement is wrong to be publicizing that. They would not have done that if the individual was a minor, and that individual was probably developed at the age of a neurotypical minor in their brain. Just think about that. That is not fair, and it is wrong, and it pisses me off, and it pisses me off that I'm being compared to that because I behaved nowhere near close to that. And my reasons for being triggered with the whole typology thing are because people had harassed me for 3 years of me being EIE, and even when I was developing rheumatoid arthritis, and it triggers my trauma with gaslighting and invalidation that is very real. Being told I'm a schizophrenic who hallucinated abuse and molest. No, like that's not comparable to that at all. I'm offended. I am very offended.